expect you to obey my commands at all times. Most of all, protect yourself at all times. Touch gloves, good luck.
The drama surrounding Abdullah Mason and Manuel Jaimes didn't begin when the first punch was thrown. It started long before the bell ever rang, in the quiet intensity of preparation, in the whispers of strategy, and in the unshakable belief that only one man would leave the ring with his momentum intact. From the opening moments, there was a sense that this wasn't just another fight. It was a test of levels. Mason, still incredibly young but already carrying himself like a seasoned tactician, stepped into the ring with that familiar calm intensity. Across from him stood Jaimes, a fighter who had seen adversity, who had tasted defeat, but who also believed that those experiences had hardened him for a moment like this. After all, he had shared the ring with Rolley Romero and survived. That alone builds a certain kind of confidence, the kind that whispers, "You belong here." But boxing has a cruel way of redefining belief. The opening exchanges were measured, almost cautious. But beneath that caution was a storm waiting to erupt. Mason, known for being a fast starter, wasted no time establishing his presence. His jab, sharp, authoritative, almost punishing, wasn't just a tool for range. It was a statement. Every time it snapped forward, it wasn't just touching Jaimes. It was freezing him, interrupting his rhythm, forcing him to second-guess every step. Jaimes knew what he was supposed to do: close the distance, make it ugly, disrupt the timing. That was the blueprint. Standing at range against Mason wasn't just dangerous, it was suicidal. And yet, executing that plan against a fighter with Mason's precision is easier said than done. Because Mason doesn't just throw punches, he sets traps. You can see it early. The feints, the subtle shifts, the way his eyes stayed locked in, reading every twitch, every hesitation. It was as if he already knew what Jaimes was going to do before Jaimes himself had committed to it. That a rare quality in a fighter, especially one so young, the ability to anticipate rather than react. And then came the first real moment. A jab, stiff, deliberate, snapped Jaimes' head back. It didn't look like much at first, but it was a setup. The kind of setup that only becomes obvious when it's too late. Jaimes tried to respond, tried to step in, but Mason was already one step ahead. The counter came fast, clean, and precise. The knockdown wasn't just physical, it was psychological. From that point on, the fight began to shift. Not dramatically at first, but subtly. Jaimes was still there, still fighting, still trying to impose himself, but there was hesitation creeping into his movements. And hesitation, against a sharpshooter like Mason, is the beginning of the end. What made Mason so dangerous wasn't just his speed or his power. It was a variety. You couldn't predict what was coming next. A jab would turn into a hook would disguise an uppercut. And that uppercut, sharp, sneaky, and perfectly timed, became one of the most devastating weapons of the night. It was reminiscent, in flashes, of fighters like Gervonta Davis, who can turn a single opening into a fight-ending moment. But Mason brought his own flavor to it. Where others rely on explosiveness alone, Mason combined it with surgical precision. Jaimes tried to adjust. You could see the effort. He attempted to use lateral movement, tried to step inside, tried to make Mason uncomfortable. And for brief moments, he found small successes, a right hand here, a body shot there. But every time he landed, Mason answered. And not just with a single punch, but with combinations that felt like they were thrown at a different speed altogether. That's when the second knockdown came. It wasn't just the impact, it was the timing. Jaimes had just landed one of his better shots in fight. For a split second, it looked like he might be finding his rhythm. But Mason, calm as ever, stepped back, created just enough space, and fired a counter that Jaimes never saw coming. Down he went again. That's the cruel reality of boxing at this level. You can do everything right for a moment, but one mistake, one lapse in focus, and it all unravels. By now, the pattern was clear. Jaimes was fighting with heart. There's no question about that. He kept getting up. He kept trying. He refused to quit. But Mason was operating on a different level entirely. His balance, his footwork, his ability to maintain power while moving. It all pointed to a fighter who had not only mastered the fundamentals, but had elevated them. At just 20 years old, he was showing traits you normally associate with elite champions. The composure, the patience, the killer instinct. And that killer instinct is what truly separates good fighters from great ones. Because when Mason hurt Jaimes, he knew it. You could see it in his eyes. The moment he detected weakness, he shifted gears. The combinations became sharper, more aggressive. The pressure intensified. It wasn't reckless. It was calculated aggression, the kind that closes a show. Jaimes, to his credit, never stopped trying. Even as the fight slipped further out of reach, he continued to throw, continued to search for something, anything, that could turn the tide. But against a fighter like Mason, effort alone isn't enough. The third knockdown felt inevitable. By this point, Jaimes looked like a man caught between survival and defiance. His body was absorbing punishment, his reaction slowing just enough for Mason to capitalize. And Mason did exactly that. Another clean sequence, another perfectly timed shot, another trip to the canvas. The crowd could feel it. The tension wasn't about who would win anymore. It was about when it would end, and then came the fourth. It was sudden, almost abrupt. One moment they were exchanging. The next Jaimes was down again. The referees stepping in. The fight waved off. Just like that, it was over, but the story didn't end there. Because what we witnessed wasn't just a victory. It was a statement. Mason didn't just beat Jaimes. He dismantled him. He showcased a level of skill, composure, and intelligence that forces you to start asking bigger questions. How far can he go? When you watch a performance like that, comparisons start to emerge. The precision of Naoya Inoue, the explosiveness of Tank, the technical discipline of seasoned champions. And yet, Mason is still carving out his own identity, his own path, for knockdowns, for moments where the fight could have ended. And each one told the same story. A fighter who sees everything, who anticipates everything, and who punishes every mistake. For Jaimes, it's a tough loss, but it's also a reminder of the unforgiving nature of the sport. He came in prepared. He came in confident. But he ran into a fighter who was simply better on the night. And for Mason, this is just the beginning. Because performances like this don't just win fights. They build reputations. They create momentum. They turn prospects into contenders. The question now isn't whether Abdullah Mason is talented. That's already been answered. The question is how long it will take before the rest of the division realizes just how dangerous he truly is. And maybe, just maybe, we're witnessing the rise of something special. So what do you think? Is Abdullah Mason already ready for the elite names in the division? Or does he still need a few more tests before stepping into the biggest fights? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more deep, cinematic fight stories like this.